Assalamu alaikum. This is part 3 for the third story of Surah Kahf by themes. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Story of a believer with exclusive knowledge. A key theme of Surah Kahf is how some special believers can receive remarkable mercy from Allah. In this story, Musa alayhi salam will meet this servant of Allah who received extraordinary mercy and knowledge taught by Allah, as we are told in verse 65. آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. Tafsir tells us he is known as Khidr alayhi salam. He is not specified as an angel or a prophet. Musa was to meet him at the junction of the two seas, and he was traveling with Yusha bin Nun. We see from verse 68 that his knowledge was far beyond what even Musa, a prophet of Allah, could even comprehend or grasp. This shows a key theme that Allah's special mercy can be provided to a person who is not a prophet. This time the mercy was in the form of unique knowledge. In the last story of the youth in the cave, the mercy came in the form of honor to those special believers by putting them in a miraculous sleep. They were not only saved from persecution, but their story was recorded in the Quran as a sign from Allah of resurrection. The youth in the cave were asking for Allah's guidance. And now in verse 66, we see how pursuing knowledge is also guidance. Musa alayhi salam is following Khidr alayhi salam to get knowledge for the purpose of acquiring rushd, which is guidance or the right way. So let's keep on looking at more ways we see Allah's mercy given to the special believers in this story. What is significant here is that Allah's help for believers comes in ways that we cannot totally understand on the surface. What is happening to a believer could be turning away something harmful for this world or for his hereafter. So in the first case, the ship crew must have been believers, because they recognized Al-Khidr alayhi salam and allowed him to board on the ship with Musa alayhi salam. We learn from verse 79 that Khidr made a hole in the ship after riding on it, so it appeared damaged and does not get seized by this tyrant king. But on the surface, it looked to Musa alayhi salam that he was harming the very poor people that helped him. But the damage to the ship made the king skip the ship as damaged. So this knowledge was beyond the understanding of Musa alayhi salam. So how can we understand the reasoning for what happens in our lives that may appear bad for us? In the second case, Khidr alayhi salam took the life of a boy as Allah's decree or qadr. Again, on the surface, this looked harmful to Musa alayhi salam. However, we are told in verse 80 that the parents of this boy were mu'min, or pious believers. The son would have pressured the parents into leaving their faith, and they would have gone into rebellion against Allah. So the harm would happen to the parents who would have lost their hereafter out of love for this boy. So Allah replaces the son with another pure child who would bring in Allah's special mercy, rahmah, for the parents. In the third case of Khidr alayhi salam, again the word rahmah is mentioned in verse 82 for two orphan sons of a righteous believer of Allah. Khidr alayhi salam repaired a wall that was ready to collapse, though the people of the city refused to even give them any hospitality. So Musa alayhi salam questioned this act of generosity by Khidr. Again, Musa did not understand that in reality the orphan sons of this righteous believer were being provided with a treasure under the wall. So in summary, we see Allah's rahmah for the believing crew of the ship, for the pious parents of the evil boy, and for the two orphan sons of the righteous man. So Allah's rahmah comes in ways that we do not quite understand. For example, although we may not be happy with our current job or with our spouse, there could be a hidden mercy that would help us become closer to Allah, inshallah. We have seen so far every story in Surah Kahf mention the will of Allah. And in this story of Khidr alayhi salam, the central theme is the will of Allah. The law of human beings would not allow someone to take a life as Khidr alayhi salam did. We know he acts out the will of Allah because several times in the verses there is repeat of the word arada, meaning intention. In verse 79, he says, I intended to cause defect in the ship. In verse 81, he says, we intended that their Lord would replace him by one better than him in purity and mercy. In verse 82, he says, your Lord intended that these orphans reach maturity and retrieve their treasure. At the end of 82, he also clearly clarifies that he did not carry out any action on his own. وَمَا فَعَلْتَهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. He was simply carrying out the will of Allah. Interesting that Musa's being patient also required Allah's will, as he did say, insha'Allah, in verse 69. But he did not have the patience as this knowledge was beyond his reach. We saw in the first video that Allah mentions in verse 9 that the story of the companions of the cave will be a wonder among our signs. كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. As we know, another meaning of ayat is sign, and ajaba means amazingly or wondrously. Throughout the stories of Surah Kahf, we will see some wondrous signs of Allah. The fish in this story that fell into the water while Musa alayhi salam was traveling with Yusha bin Nun was mentioned twice. This is because the path that the fish took through the water miraculously left a track behind. This is first mentioned in verse 61. فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا. And again the path of this fish is mentioned, this time using the word ajaban in verse 63. وَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ عَجَبًا. So, following the trace left by this fish as a sign from Allah enabled Musa alayhi salam to find Khidr alayhi salam. We also note in this same verse that shaitan is still active, even though Allah's signs are being shown. Yusha bin Nun forgot the fish and acknowledged that it was shaitan who made him forget. But of course, when Allah's will is present, shaitan's acts are nullified. Please join for the next part, which will cover themes from the next story of Surah Kahf. If you have benefited, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.